Relaxed as I will be.
Hi, good day everyone. My name is Dr. I'm a clinical psychologist, psychotherapist, speech and language therapist, and this is the new episode for Spectrum Talks and Tips International. And today we are going to talk about a new person, not a new person, but this will be a new story for Autism Diary. And let's see how things are different, or how things are unique, or how things are same for that person, and how is the somehow life journey. And we have Jim Iron, Iron Man.
Ir- Irion,
Irion.
like Erie and in, Erie in.
Okay, but in your it is written on Iron Man, so I thought maybe it's Iron.
Well, if you take my last name and look at the middle I, it's like iron with the I in the middle.
Because sometimes when two vowels come together, then you have to combine them. That's the rule of English, but I don't know why these rules are not applied here. So, can you tell me about yourself and a little bit about you, about your education?
Oh, I have then. That's one of the most interesting things I've learned in the last, to be fair, 6, 7 years. In the last year regarding autism is how does one tell their story? It always changes. So much to share, so much I've gone over. I am 41. I'll be 42 in October. I'm from Pennsylvania on the East Coast of the United States. And I've had quite a journey that I'm only less than a year into knowing that not only am I autistic, but that was a turning point in May and June of 2022 that I actually learned how much it influences my thinking, my behavior, my life, and what I say to people, what I do, how I think to respond to a question, even like this, everything. Because I was diagnosed nearly 3 years earlier in August of 2019, and I knew very little. And I also wanted for the assessment a few months prior to kind of keep an open mind so I didn't get the wrong idea. And in the last year, especially of understanding it more, going back over my past to learn who I am, what parts are important, how did I get here, why, what are the issues, ups and downs, is it as far as mental health goes for me, it goes all the way back to 1990 when I was, and forgive me, I don't have the, usually I have prepared when I give dates, I give ages or high school and grades so that I can relate to audience members that are younger. So I was still fairly young. It was a few years before fourth grade. I was diagnosed then with attention deficit disorder.
Okay.
And I entered into care with those who assessed me for over the next 20 years. And what they did is they did services like they had their own counselors, they had a physician who ran the practice, and you do some tests, you get your weight and blood pressure. They would ask you how you're doing, make suggestions. To narrow that down in a nutshell, until I left the practice in 2008, the medication I was prescribed for ADD worked. It helped me focus, helped me concentrate, and that was at the time important for grades in high school and college. But there just seemed to be something missing. It just didn't seem the care that I was receiving from them and not knowing or to being aware of looking at anything else, it just didn't seem to work. So I was in my mid 20s by 2008. I had gone through college right after high school. I graduated in 2000. And to touch on some things that happened before that later, okay, 2008, it was a key point that I've yet to write a new article about was I went back to college. That afforded me the time when I had had long-term depression up until '08, my mid 20s. It allowed that to subside because I didn't have to decide tomorrow what job or what career. That had been a very difficult ongoing problem I still have. And it gave me 2 years of a break, long enough for the depression to wane. And I picked up important mindfulness and coping skills that really helped me a decade later. So, okay, I graduated after 2 years. I did better than I did the first time after high school with a bachelor's of arts degree in history and a minor in criminal justice. What I had in 2002 was a liberal arts degree. everything came back as far as the career indecision, communication issues, conflicts with people, problems dating, right where it left off in '08. And so fast forward another 4, 5, 6 years of having relapsed with suicide 2 to 3 times. I had attempted in 2003. If we come back to that, I'll say more. So I had temp employment 4 times, 2 and 2, because they asked me to come back to both of the first 2 places. And I had a full-time job for 1 year at a customer service for direct TV tech troubleshooting. That was until the summer of 2016, the next big part of my journey that I wasn't getting anywhere. There was something holding me back. There was something that was missing. I couldn't figure out what did I want to do. And as I told my counselor, I see them at least once a week currently. I don't know. It's just, it's something I can never figure out. And I have to keep in mind sustainability and independence. At some point, I need to get something. So I got let go from my job, and I'm faced with what I had to deal with in 2003. So on one hand, I'm risking another relapse, and all it takes is once. I'm a survivor. I've a lost survivor and an attempt survivor of suicide, and I know how serious it can be. So I was looking at that and thinking something has to change because I've been trying to do what normal society has guided me along to do, and it wasn't working. So I didn't necessarily, as I say in one of my articles, I didn't necessarily make the right decision to stop looking for employment, but I made the next best decision to start trying to address my mental health. Because all I had, remember, was ADD from 1990. I wasn't aware of anything else other than depression, anxiety, but it wasn't diagnosed. So it took me, after I sought out a referral for a counselor from my primary care physician, it took 2 years because the counselor suggested to explore the volunteer community here for help. But I had some communication issues that I didn't know why. I started alienating people one after the other, and I lost opportunities. I pretty much just people, probably some of them haven't thought of me the same way, and in part I don't blame them. But then in 2018 October, I started versus what I had in my youth. I would usually refer to this as modern or conventional counseling because when somebody thinks, such as yourself, being a clinical psychologist, when someone thinks counselor these days, I had something different years ago. So I started in October 2018, and I've looked back at this numerous times because she was not experienced with autism. She wasn't familiar with it, and the research information wasn't on hand in proper form for this to happen. But what she started me in early 2019 was dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT. And for some reason, it was confusing for me. It was awkward. Not to say that it's not positive for someone else or someone who's autistic, but for me, it was confusing. Then one day in May, my counselor started thinking outside of the box. We reached that maintenance level, and she said, in her near exact words, "No wonder why it isn't working. I'm going to have you assessed for autism." So the following month in June, the assessment was indicative of being autistic. We spent the next 2 months until August of 2019 weekly appointments with my counselor discussing it, and 2 monthly appointments with my psychiatrist. And in August, they confirmed that I was. That's where my story could have had a happier ending. But almost 3 years later, in May of 2022, that I mentioned before being in the next important date of my story for autism, was I still knew very little. I had to change a counselor in 2020 because of the pandemic and the way everything went. Was so much more difficult for so many people. And I didn't know what to do. So I had my second counselor, and we looked at research information, which, if you search the internet, there will be articles on autism. by mental health professionals, many or all of whom have a PhD. And during those 2 to 3 years, everything I looked up or I and my counselor looked up was for me confusing because there would be very little consensus. If there was a list of traits to compare on more than one site, more than one article, not much would match up. So it was very counterproductive. And for those 3 years, I didn't gain much. I picked up bits and pieces of traits as I've analogized that I was looking with my back to the tree and I was seeing a few of the falling leaves, but I wasn't seeing the big picture. But then in May, I started asking the right questions because we have a National Alliance of Mental Illness, a NAMI affiliate locally that I volunteered with when I explored the volunteer community. And she referred me to a discussion group on the nonprofit's website that, not to reveal what was there for members and for those who aren't, to respect the privacy, what came out of that was a debate that made me ask the right questions. What is it? What is autism? What is this ASD? Autism spectrum disorder, Asperger's, ASPI, many terms. So I looked up, and within the next few weeks, I had an assistant director of another nonprofit for housing give me the link for the overview on the National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH. Their overview of autism listed it as a neurological and developmental disorder. And I prepared to bring that point up. I'm going to, over top of the cam to see you, I'm going to quote a paragraph from my writing that will show what my thinking was at the time that I understood it, what changed. And the paragraph will begin. It had been nearly 3 years since my autism diagnosis. My social problems were getting worse. My career indecision was unresolved. This was 2020. I was drifting further away from society. At age 40, with my mental health evaluated, I could not get my life on track. After the appeal decision, I reached out to my NAMI affiliate's executive director. At the time, I'm reading, actually, pardon the wrong paragraph. That was explaining the lead up. I was going to explain what my thinking was. Forgive me for that. To advance to the next paragraph, it was, here's my thinking of how did it suddenly make sense? I noticed how the word neurological was prominently referenced in the sentence of the NIMH definition. So I asked myself, how does neurology affect me? To demonstrate autistic thinking, since this is still fresh in my memory, here is exactly what my reasoning was. Using simple biology, my heart is essential to pump blood for my body to function, followed by my lungs to oxygenate my vital organs and my brain to control everything. What happens next? If my brain controls my neurology, this is before I act or react. Autism had to be more than a set of traits, such as oversharing and missing social cues. It could be influencing all of my behavior, including my thinking, which is crucial to how I function as an individual. I felt it was very serious for me not to have known sooner. Even though I was not a biologist or a psychologist, the deductive reasoning was sound. So that's what my thinking was like. And in my writing as an advocate past year, I tried to give that insight. What goes through my head? What is it like? How did I come to that conclusion? What was I missing? What did I gain? So May 2022, a very important time. As I'm talking about this, I had started in a support group in 2019 for adult age. We're very lucky to have it. I'll say that the agency is the Center for Independent Living, South Central PA, PA being for Pennsylvania. They restarted in-person meetings in April of 2022. So while I'm there in June, I'm sharing this big pieces falling into place, understanding it in a hurry, and I was offered a presentation opportunity. So if I can write about resource needs that appeared to be lacking for ages over 21. So I did informal research on social media, Facebook groups, interactions, and observing of autistic people on Twitter over about a month and a half to 2 months. And I kept seeing a pattern of, quote, over the age of 21 or um, age out of the system. And I've later recognized through pattern recognition, being an autistic skill, I was able to see that. And when I saw enough of it across of a wide enough area of geography, literally from California to the UK, I realized it was probable that it was more of an issue than just me here where I am in my county in Pennsylvania. It could be potentially bigger. I don't know more of the big picture. I've observed more since, but I saw enough. And it always comes back when I see what everybody else is dealing with. It always comes back to me. At the end of the day, look at the wall of my parents' home, of my bedroom that I've been living in and haven't moved out from. I still live at home, for better or worse. My parents are much more understanding, patient, and supportive of my mental health now, versus when I started and had to address it on my own. So, June 2023, July, and when I finished the presentation, I had a day where I was literally beside myself in good and bad ways. It was everything suddenly made sense. I had it in writing. I could read it in a matter of seconds. And I realized what I've been through bullying, I've been through suicide, long-term severe depression, several anxiety disorders, a personality disorder as well. And I just think back to fourth grade in elementary school, the first time I was singled out and bullied, and what that felt like, and how I saw other people experiencing the same thing. Or I just saw someone in the classroom and wondered, they're probably going to feel the same way. That extension of compassion always works its way into how I deal with autism issues and how I deal with myself, because I can't just help myself. I got to help someone else, or I can't just help a few people. But if I can help more, then it's going to help me along the way. So I got that original presentation opportunity and had it in November for a task force for education where I live. But we're talking July and August of 2022. And I realized, just taking a peek at the clock, um, that here I am, summer of 2022. I was 40 at the time. And I can recall thinking there was a time a few years before I didn't want to live beyond that. I've been so held back. Now I knew why. I haven't, I missed the ideal time of my life to settle down and have kids. Could still have kids, can still settle down. But what most people don't realize is missing that, you can't make up for it. It's gone. You can't go back. You can do what you can with the time that you have left. And that's an important positive thing to do. But some people have to deal with that negativity of their situation in their life first before they can move beyond it. It's not always easy. So I have this information, what one person, can bring together, think, deduce logical conclusions and observations. I had to do more. So with my care provider that I have all three of my services with, case management, counseling, and psychiatry, I decided to pitch to the director of that facility. This isn't the main facility. It's one of their satellite locations of the presentation, and I got the opportunity in September. And I gave the presentation, and not disclosing too much, just to extend professionalism. It wasn't a surprise for what I was describing in my life and the information I researched. It was feared that it may happen up to 10, 20 years ago. It just wasn't sure. The information just wasn't there. So I got an opportunity that I've already given another presentation within the care provider, is high up in the mental health side of their operations in January. That was January 19th. It's one of their internal, kind of like a podcast, but they do it to inform the people that are working under the company. And it went just like the first one, very well. So at that point, I had three. I've given three to date, plus an informal inter-office presentation for an international nonprofit that has a basis in this state. So that brings me very close. And I just want to take a few moments to say, you got me on a good day, not necessarily good like that, because this last couple days, I've had wavering, I want to say confidence. I usually have confidence, but what I said to my counselor was with trying to move forward these opportunities mostly on my own, not having all the information, but having enough to compel me to move forward with what I have in my life. Because sometimes it's a numbers game, sometimes it's not. And there was doubt, there was questioning. And so I immediately I didn't bottom out, but I had more depression than I've had in the last several months. I've had the longest break I've had in a long time because I'm focused on this, trying to do something. Call to action as I have on my Twitter profile, trying to share this information, pitching it to people that sometimes you might never get an interview. And I'm here trying to reach, and I have a potential opportunity in Australia in the second half of the year, uh, waiting to hear more information. And I described to my counselor what this just this week what it's like to wait and be 41 now, gone through all this, and essentially 23 years since I graduated high school held back developmental setbacks for that long. I feel like I'm walking on thin air. And that's not a suicide reference. It's a fragility of burden of knowledge. I knew too much and I want to do something and I can. As a group, teamwork, I feel people are making a difference. I've seen more information since last summer and fall that there are people such as yourself, Dr. Khan, who you are autistic, and that's extremely valuable. It's somebody who's above a counselor, an LPC position, who has the education, who is doing something in probably one of the more remote countries in the world and making progress. That's so much to be proud and thankful for. But the mental health profession, and I'm not sure we do have at least half an hour yet. We may come back to quote the conclusions I've come to in my last article I self-published in January, in that it's big. I don't go for biting off more than I can chew because I want to. I'm in a certain situation, as a lot of people I believe are, and not everybody can speak up. I've been an advocate by starting with volunteering in my community after having a considerable number of years volunteering in general for community service. This last 6 or 7 years has been specific to mental health. Working my way to where I am now, I've realized not everybody can speak out. Not everybody can, no matter what the issue is, autism, it could be addiction, it could be abuse, it might be another mental health condition, physical condition. If it's hidden, it's even harder that you can lose your job. And I've come across a few people in the last couple months through Twitter or Facebook, that one in particular, and I've already prepared and practiced not to share too much information, but there is a Facebook group that a friend had invited me in a year ago. It was part of that research material for my presentation. But my friend who keeps a closer eye on it than I did, I'm mostly on Twitter now, she saw someone who was well over 21 and shared her message with me. And so being adamant, being an advocate, taking a leap of faith and wanting to do something to help people, I carefully, unlike in years past, it might not have been the same, very professional, very trusting, ensuring that her trust is more important than anything else, made that connection because she is married with a couple kids and they're fairly young. So what happened in her case was she was working at a manager position for 10 years. This is pretty good as far as job security these days. And she's in her mid to late 30s. I've seen that women aren't taken seriously of across a wide age range into youth as far as are they autistic or not and will they be diagnosed. With her, she got her diagnosis last fall. that something transpired with her employer that involved another employee who made an accusation of misconduct. And what I'd heard from this individual that happened, I will say it's suspicious as being discrimination because the employer fired her. And now she's out of work. They lose half their income. I'm under the impression her husband's working. I hope to care for at least the one to two kids that they have. And here she is in her mid to late 30s, two kids, married. She has that security net to a point, but the employability immediately comes to question because she was very concerned, anxious, anxiety that what does she do? Now she knows. And it's not that she knows too much, but once you know, how do you go around talking to people if you're autistic and watching what you say? I have as it's referred to now, as ADHD1 inattentive. So that puts the spin on the ball. Autism changes what that ball looks like in so many different ways. So she's only fearful of that is before I made contact, her message on that group that my friend showed me, some of her last words were, she wants to do exactly what I've been doing. And I don't think that's just because of the discrimination she was probably subjected to in her employer. It's just a call to a calling that she felt. Of course, I got her up to speed, sharing information on shared her my presentation, gave her a list of autism traits now that I know that they're masculine derived and may not present themselves the same in women. It at least would give her as much as I know now. And then I share with her my writing on Medium. I have 8 self-published articles, including the one I just read from. And so far, I'm waiting to see that if she has the time to do a presentation like mine, I have an idea to do a presentation program. But there's somebody well over 18, well over 21, woman, has kids, is in a family, lost her job, discrimination. And me, I lost mine. I won't reveal details because they say don't say why you were let go from an employer for other employers to see. But I will say I had to take part responsibility, but it could have been discrimination because I had asked for accommodations. I didn't know I was autistic, but I did know I had ADD and they weren't given. So I'm looking at this just this past week. I'm 41, I'll be 42. I used to be told all the time, oh, Jim, you're still young yet. You'll find someone with companionship. You'll figure things out. I'm 41 now, and I haven't. And I've done a lot of retrospection, not just leading up to this time in my life right now, but this last week or two that I say I'm walking on thin air, that I'm depending on waiting on people to see if there's opportunities to move forward, trying to gather as much information as I can, because pattern recognition for autism as a skill can be very valuable and quite accurate. But I don't know what's out there. And I feel that there's a potential X factor of those who are undiagnosed because there may have been more who are missed over the age of 21 if they were more functional like me. Whereas I say in my presentation, I debunked the use of the term, the label high functioning, because I'm a living example of what used to be referred to as high functioning. And I'm still living at home. My parents are supportive. They can't be forever, and they won't be around forever. I need to get somewhere, move out on my own, bringing that into the center of discussion with my counselor, my case manager, my treatment team right now, because my counselor and I have quickly reached a maintenance level. She's my third. I had one in 2018, switched to a new one in 2020, and had my third in November of last year. And a lot of doubt, helplessness, uh, wanting to be helpful, needing that purpose, talking a lot about fixation. And there are those who are autistic of a wide age range, I think, not just older. My brother, for example, he wanted to be a truck driver since he was little. Some people are like that that are autistic. I didn't. I never could. Anxiety, fear of failure may have played a part, but it may have also been like a effect of being taken down straight. I have one of my articles, part of my journey is the journey, that would be too long to quote. It's describing the last 30 years since junior high of the clues that I feel I've uncovered to indicate, if you recall when I said about when I returned to college, actually I didn't think I mentioned it. The biggest red flag that I was masking when I returned to college to get my bachelor's degree, I lied about my degree choice.
Okay, now let me ask you a few questions because that was a kind of a monotonous, and when somebody's sharing, I don't like to jump into things. And people would say that okay, one person is talking, the person is not talking. When you said that you were diagnosed with ADHD when you were a child, what was the symptoms, or you could say what was the indicator for that you went for that diagnosis, or what was the reason in first case you went for diagnosis, even if it's not even all about ADHD?
ADHD diagnosis, I can answer that. Good question too. Because of my birth year versus my autism, that autism wasn't understood and Asperger's was
But even
not
what
an
was your
advanced understanding.
symptoms, or what was your struggles, or what was your problems around, why you went for that diagnosis? Either your teacher asked you for that, or your parents feel that you have to go for that.
What they saw in 1990 was I was not paying attention.
Mhm.
I was not focusing on the coursework. I was easily distracted. And so the teachers at school saw it first, saw enough of it that impeded my progress, that my parents, and this is 1990, searched around for specialist care to have me evaluated. And while I don't recall, this is anecdotal information I picked up. Once I was evaluated with, I still have the old paperwork in my files that they concluded that I did have ADHD.
Mhm.
But in their care up to '08, I was in specialist care, and I just recently emphasized that for a reason because that's all they see.
Mhm.
And he may still see in his continuing practice, not to criticize, but there was never, I've seen in the last year that there may be people who have both. They may be interrelated and they may be the same thing, maybe not. It's
So when
indeterminate
you
at
were
this time.
diagnosed, and how about you that information was taken to your school, how was they dealing you? Was something different? They give you extra care? They were a teacher with you? What was the system after that when you were diagnosed? Because it's different for everyone. People are from different school, and sometimes parents share this with school. Sometimes parents did not even share this with the child, that you have this kind of thing. You are autistic, or I know that a lot of people have those kind of histories. So, what was your uh, family take on that?
I think my grades were starting to suffer problems with deadlines as far as assignments, that the teachers were concerned they were seeing enough of a change. This would have been, I think, second grade, third grade. So preteens, as they used to refer to it, and got enough concern that they had me assessed.
Mhm.
But when they prescribed the medication that I still take, um, it helped me focus. It helped me maintain those grades.
That was
And
not
when I went to
every
college,
kind of, you could say, teachers were not assigned to you, or you were not, you know, there was not team with you that was working with you. You were just going with, and you were sitting with all the class. You were not sitting in extra or other room.
oh, like seating, that kept among everybody else, not moved to any separate like room that people have nowadays or special education. I was kept until graduation as a senior with everybody else.
So, uh, did this help you, or you could say that was difficult for you to be in a place where everybody is different? Because if you look toward human beings, they are different. They're not like each other. All people are different. You know, that's how humanity is. That's how you can define human, because there's always individual differences. So everybody was different. But what was your experience in your college, or in graduation, when you were doing graduation, about friendships, or about people around you, about socialization? Even you just mentioned that you lied about the choices that you had about even subject. What was your whole experience over there?
Social life that again, not knowing, I would have some difficulty
Mm-hmm.
maintaining friendship. There were conflicts outside of friendships where I would upset, offend people, dating. I had a lot of difficulty with that over the years. Um, it was just, I had these issues that were like dots on a board that I didn't know that they were related for the longest time. And, I can find new friends. I have a good enough social skills that I can, and then the nice enough person to be able to make new friends. But sometimes long term, if I'm not in constant or frequent contact, we fall out of touch. I lose that value, that connection. And I wasn't really aware of how to describe or what kind of a support system, social support network is, I think it's called, through those years of early and mid adulthood. But I can speak to what I have maybe the last 5 or 8. Literally, sometimes one, if I'm lucky, because I realized as I got older, people have families, they have jobs, both commitments, which in their right, that's their life. People have to realize that if you need to depend on somebody to talk to, they're not always going to be free, but it's a double-edged sword. My social support network is down to maybe 1 or 2 people here or there, different person this week versus that week.
Siblings. Do you have any brother or sister, or you're the only son? Because when we were talking, you were mentioning about your brother.
Yeah, I have an older brother, 3 years older than me, and keeping his information confidential. I'll say I have my suspicions, but we both were assessed as far as I'll say the ADHD, and what is known that we both were diagnosed at the same time, and we would often go together when we were older to go over where the facility was. Um, but as far as socializing with him and being a relative, not everybody gets along with their siblings or their parents. I talk back a lot to my dad when I was growing up, but I always wondered, why do I seem to want to get that last word into not, and I was never disrespectful to my parents or my dad, but it was, I almost had to say, here's my reasoning. Here's why, or I just got to say this or explain this so you can understand me. And though thankfully in the last, particularly the last 2 years, or the 5 or 10 years, we've been doing a lot better and getting along, being that I'm living in their house. And and I think both my parents have slowly become more aware and understanding versus their generation, they're baby boomers, and there's a lot of them. Um, that it's been a challenge for them to understand it because it's not like you can always put a book in front of somebody and say, "Here's what ADHD is like. Here's what autism is like." There is no book for that yet. Hopefully, I can have a hand in getting something like that created. But family life, just a few small things that I prefer. I'm not afraid of the phone, but I prefer in person. Now I'm doing virtual. I didn't need to get my teeth pulled to do it, but it's almost like I'm phone shy. So over the years, as everybody got older, my group of friends from high school, we grew apart, which happens. But part of that was because needing that in person, and in some cases, driving to where they lived was too much of a change, too much of an abrupt change, or being rushed, not being anywhere in life that I was proud of. So that would hold me back. And as far as relatives, it's the same thing. I prefer email, and I had a 3 hour phone conversation with my aunt last year, bless her heart, in New York, but I've fallen further away from family because of not just my living situation, but my communication skills and how I'm understood. Hey, if you had another question.
Okay. So, what about the holidays? Like the holidays you have, like either it's Christmas, either it's Thanksgiving, because in those holidays, a lot of people come to your house, and how you feel at that time when there are a lot of people and
Pardon me for taking off my glasses because that's going to be a little bit emotional so that people can see and wanting to be genuine in my reactions, not forgetting that I'm looking through a teeny tiny camera lens. Holidays is something that's a bit sensitive because I always used to like Christmas, one of my favorite holidays, but that was also followed 1 week later by my least favorite, better described as I just hate New Year's Eve because, and it's diagnosed as I have chronophobia, which is a fear of time related stressors, directly from the fact that my development has been arrested for the last 20 years. The holidays, it's hard. It's hard to see that everybody's moved on for me around me that I know, people that are further outside of my support network and family, seeing them, my older aunts and uncles getting older and missing that contact. It's hard being 41, and I'm never going to let too much of this out because it hurts that I'm at this age and I've been held back because I see like I'm on the outside looking in. Like you shake the snow globe and you see everybody, you look in that window and it's snowing outside, but you look in, everybody's warm and reasonably happy. Not everybody's family situations are peachy, but and here I am, I'm capable. And that's what's really hard about blending in as someone who's as functional as I am, because you're always not taken seriously, but you're always seeing yourself separate from the world is looking in the mirror. Who am I? And seeing what they're getting and what they're going through. And again, although not every marriage is a happy marriage, not every childhood is a happy childhood, I don't have any of my own to raise. And why that's so hard to deal with is because it's one of the fundamental things of our species to procreate or to get married as far as religion and culture. And I've been seeing it pass me by for over 20 years. And it hurts as far as that has been one of the major factors for at least two, not three of the four suicide experiences I've had. That's driven me to see myself as, do I want to be here? What's keeping me here? What keeps me here right now, this week, today, on a day by day basis, is what people would refer to as just getting by each day. And I know that's too many people to resolve that for, but it's hard. And I don't have it as hard as some.
But
So
life is hard and life is difficult for a lot of people. And if they describe somebody that that person's high function, even I don't understand this high and low function. It's a basis of these are terminology, and you sometimes question those things too. That if you're functional, that why you're not able to do certain things. It's more about what kind of coping mechanism, what kind of coping skill, because you're working with your therapist for such a long time. And I think so, because I'm a therapist too. Therapists need to be able to, if they cannot sort of a lot of thing in your life, for example, that was you're not able to uh, reach your diagnosis, whatever, or not able to understand the thing or the perspective of you, but at least people need to work on coping skill. People need to work on practicality, that what need to be done, what you can do. For example, if the thing that you're doing right now, they could have suggested this longer ago, because you are going to therapist for long time. And it's like what you're talking in the therapy session, you know it's like you have this one long therapy session, what you're talking all the time, like you are just sharing and she's just listening or he's just listening. So that is the lack of, I would say that, uh, lack of understanding from the therapeutic side. And I'm not even blaming them. We need to understand the perspective of autistic, ADHD, or learning disability, or SEND perspective in therapy too, because it's more like, for example, like you were saying that they were using dialectic behavior therapy, or they will use cognitive behavior therapy, like challenge your thought. If you don't understand what are your thought, how are you going to challenge that thought? That second thing, we work on emotions. If, for example, I work with a girl and she said that some incident happened to her and she was crying, and I said, "What do you feel?" She said that I was so angry. That was her odd response. Like after a whole incident, that was a bullying incident. Like she fell on the ground while sitting, and everybody was laughing at her, and she was so angry at that. I said that, what do you feel? So she said that I was angry, and nothing else was coming from her side. I said, okay, let's understand that what you can do about that. what was the whole experience you had. And she gave me 4 to 5 emotions other than being angry. She said, I was sad, I felt alone, I was crying, I wanted to cry, I just want to leave that place. So she just get to understand that, okay, yes, I felt those things too. So that is the part of, I would say, education system and education awareness. Like we lack that thing. We lack those things in our school system. Teachers are not well prepared to handle those children who have different additional or supportive needs. I would say that if we look towards concert, a lot of time what they are saying is a lot of time. I would say they're working for maybe neurotypical people. For example, they would ask you, if you look toward coping mechanism, they would say that, okay, get up of your bed every day, make your bed, eat 3 times a meal, go socialize, go out, exercise, do this, do that. And if a person is not able to get out of bed and drink a cup of water, cup of tea, you are feeling that dysfunctional at that day because you are feeling not good at that day. So I don't know how those coping mechanisms work for those people. So we have to give a lot of thought. It's not just that we need to work on our social, the institution that we have, the social services that we have. We have to work as a society and as a community for those things. But if you look toward yourself, um, I'm always a kind of person who look toward solutions. Like, what is the solution? We have to find a solution for things. So if you look toward yourself, and if the thing that you are doing, and I think you're going on a right track find to find, because you're finding a meaning in your life. And when you find a meaning, it means that you have a responsibility to maybe give awareness to people, maybe to let other people understand that you can be little kinder to people around you, those you feel that those are different. It's not even about autism or not about ADHD. It could be other disability too, it could be physical disabilities too. So just be kinder, just be nicer to them, and just give a supportive environment, and that could help them out to live that experience, because life is hard for them. It's also hard for you too. So I think you find a reason, and you are going on track to that. And I think you need to find more of um, places, support groups, you could say. Physically you can go there, and if you go and you will go toward them and you will reach them out, so that will fill the gap, you know the gap between you and yourself. Because it's like when you're talking to somebody, it's a mirror also, like you find yourself, what you like, what you don't like. So I think you're going on a right track toward that thing. And you need to do those things more often. Either it's your writing, either it's your understanding, either you're reading. But try to reach out to as much community as you can. So it's not just if it's about disability, it could be underprivileged people, children, you will you will love them when you will work them. So there are few things that we know that we cannot have uh, at a moment right now. You never know what is going to happen tomorrow or day after tomorrow. That's what life is. You never know what is
Mhm.
going to happen. But at moment, what you could do is reach out more people as much as you can, and on your own comfort level, how much comfortable you are over this. So I think that would be give you something, some kind of a way go forward to. And what has happened, and I'm not your therapist, but as a interviewer, like we talk to each other, and we do this discussion. The reason for that to come out, because it's not easy to come out and talk about yourself. you know you never know how difficult it would be for me to do all this thing. For other people it look very easy, but it's not like that. you know Getting prepared,
Exactly, yes.
you know and living in a different time zone. Your time zone is different, my time zone is different. I was in a space, it was my 2 a.m. in the morning time. So you could say that how much things are shifting for me. And do what you are doing right now, and don't stop doing that. This is what I would say. Because empathy right now is the rarest thing, the expensive thing, I would say. You don't find it anywhere. And people want to have someone, people want to, even if you don't need to, maybe you don't need to lead a whole revolution. You don't need to take the responsibility of whole society on your head. But as much as you can
Mm.
do, maybe two people, maybe three people, find one or two people and get along with them. So that would give you purpose and that will give you meaning. And you will, you know, you will feel those colors around, which was not there when you were growing up, and which was taken from you, maybe because of society, maybe by the people, and that I would give you a way forward. And do you think you can do that?
Keep doing it as long as I'm helping more than one person. Yes, because I had somebody. It was a couple weeks ago, so it was of abuse, and it made me think of that phrase of you can help at least one person, you're making a difference, which is true. But this was someone who had had a lot of trauma and abuse in her upbringing, as well as in a couple marriages to the present. Literally, it's almost been nonstop. And it was a serious example of a lot. And it made me think, I can't just stop. If I had to take one person, I couldn't stop with her as much as she went through. I got to help more than just even someone who's a worst case scenario, because it's the next mission. It's that compassion. It's seeing
And
certain figures like
yeah, and set a
Christ
goal
or
that you
like
can
Martin
achieve.
Luther King.
Achievable goal for you. Do not set a goal that difficult, because if you will set a difficult goal for yourself, then it is going to challenge yourself more, and you will question yourself, but I'm not able to do that. That you then you will that will be another battle for you. So the goal that you set for yourself, make it achievable, and see that how much you progress you can make. In 2 days you will do that, in 3 days you will do that. So that will help you out to do that. So I think we are about to end our discussion. At the end, what you would like to say, any message you want to give, or anything you want to say?
Something something to remember me by. If you can post this on the tweet, the link to my Medium writing,
Mhm.
I'd appreciate that very much.
Okay,
And
if
I
you can
want
just
to
send
give
me those
a
things, then I will post that, we can just write it down or maybe mention that thing.
Will do, but I have to give a shout out to you, Dr. Anila Khan, because having a last name that is hard to pronounce, I know it is important for me. One of the first things I learned was it's important for me to make sure I address somebody by saying their name right, because it shows respect. And what you're doing, where you are, and what you've done growing up to this point in your life, you should be proud of yourself too.
I think the you don't have a choice actually. People say why you are doing that, or you don't have a
Yeah,
choice. You have to do that. you know
true. We take it with us.
yeah, and you don't have a choice. People will say, oh, why you're so strong, you're living in this country, because this country is hard for a lot of reasons, hard for women too. If you do, and even the profession is not that much, you could say, people don't much that value. People still value psychiatrists, and people still value medication. They don't value that much the therapy. But yeah, you don't have a choice. People say why you're so strong, whatever it is, whatever they call it. Being strong is not a privilege. But the point is, you don't have a choice. So we are doing this every day, and we are breathing, and people around are breathing. As much as they're breathing, it means they're alive. So find a purpose, like you did already. You find a purpose for yourself, and find a goal for yourself, and make it achievable. Like, set small thing that you can achieve, instead of just, okay, I'm going to run an election. You can do that. It's not that you cannot not do that, but step by step. Even if it's a family, step by step. You never know what is going to happen, what comes in your way. That's how life is. So thank you so much for your time, and that was amazing talking to you. And let's see how many people find courage, because being there, give also people give courage too. Like, they want to say, they want to talk, you know so
You
let's
can
see.
do it. If you see this, you can do it. Not because I can, but I can believe in all of you.
And you need to find your own way actually. You cannot follow somebody on doing that. You need to find your, and
Nope,
you need to
nope,
do the way that you can do. But is your capacity, like I was saying to you, that if you're having a goal, see what you can do. You don't need to
I'm
jump towards
doing it.
some person. That is a reality actually. Maybe somebody would say that, oh, you're holding somebody back. It's not holding somebody back. You have to find your own pace, and you have to jump to that thing. Nobody can show you those things. Even if they're trying to show you the mirror, maybe in a bad way, that you didn't this, you don't have these abilities. It's not like that. It's skill, and you can attain skill anytime. We talk about certain communication skill or the way you want to do that. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for your time, and see you soon.
Bless you. Thank you again, Anila.